Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavour, watching the massive alien station grow larger on the main screen. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. After 300 years of wondering if humans were alone in the universe, they had finally found their answer. The answer was no. They were definitely not alone. The station was huge, easily 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built. Its surface gleamed with a strange blue metal that seemed to shift and move in the light. Dozens of alien ships moved around it like busy insects around a hive. "Ma'am, we're getting another transmission," reported Lieutenant Martinez from the communications station. "Same as before. They want us to stop and prepare for boarding." Sarah nodded. They had been sending the same message for the past hour as the human fleet approached. 3 human ships total: the Endeavour, the Discovery, and the New Horizon. Not much of a first impression, but it was all they could spare for this historic mission. "Tell them we're ready to receive their representatives," Sarah said, "and remind them that we come in peace." She hoped that last part was clear enough. The universal translator they had cobbled together from mathematics and basic physics was still pretty rough. For all they knew, they might have accidentally declared war by now. The alien ship that approached was sleek and elegant, shaped like a teardrop made of the same blue metal as the station. It was small, probably just a shuttle, but Sarah could see weapons mounted along its hull. The message was clear enough. They were being cautious. 20 minutes later, Sarah found herself in the Endeavour's main cargo bay, which they had hastily converted into a meeting room. The best they could do on short notice was some folding chairs and a table from the mess hall. She hoped the aliens wouldn't be offended by the simple setup. The airlock hissed open, and Sarah got her first look at an alien being. It was tall, easily 8 feet, and made entirely of what looked like living crystal. Its body was translucent, blue, the same color as their ships, and light seemed to flow through it in patterns that might have been breathing or thinking or something else entirely. It had no face that Sarah could recognize, just smooth surfaces that occasionally flashed with inner light. 2 more beings followed it. One looked like a giant spider made of silver metal, its 8 legs clicking on the floor as it moved. The other was harder to describe. It seemed to be made of flowing liquid that kept its shape, constantly shifting between colors. The crystal being spoke, and somehow the words came out in English from a device on its chest. The translation was rough, but understandable. "I am Admiral Zekth of the Hegemony Fleet. You are the beings called humans?" "Yes," Sarah replied, standing as straight as she could. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Endeavour. We represent humanity, and we come seeking peaceful contact with your people." The crystal being's light patterns shifted. It might have been surprise or amusement or something else entirely. "Humanity," Admiral Zekth repeated as if testing the word. "Your species is unknown to us. From where do you come?" Sarah gestured to one of her officers, who activated a holographic display showing the local star map. "Our home system is here," she said, pointing to a small yellow star. "We call it Sol. Our home planet is the 3rd world from the sun." The 3 aliens studied the display. The spider-like being clicked its mandibles together in what might have been speech, though the translator didn't pick it up. The liquid creature flowed closer to the display, its surface rippling with what looked like calculations. "This system is at the edge of known space," Admiral Zeketh said finally. "It is primitive. How did you achieve faster-than-light travel?" Sarah felt a small spike of irritation at the word primitive, but she kept her voice calm. "We developed fusion, drives and jump technology over the past 2 centuries. Our scientists worked very hard to make it possible." The light patterns in the crystal being shifted again. This time, Sarah was pretty sure it was amusement. "Fusion drives," Admiral Zeketh said, and now there was definitely something condescending in his tone. "How quaint. We have not used such crude propulsion for over 10,000 years." The meeting continued for another hour. Admiral Zeketh explained that they represented something called the Galactic Confederation, an alliance of 847 different species spread across the galaxy. They had maintained peace and order for thousands of years through superior technology and overwhelming force, Humanity, according to Admiral Zekth, would be classified as a Tier 7 developing species. This meant they were primitive, but not completely hopeless. The Confederation would be willing to offer humanity protectorate status. What does that mean exactly? Sarah asked. You would be under our protection, Admiral Zeketh explained, his lights pulsing in what seemed like patience. In return, you would provide us with raw materials from your system. Mining quotas would be established. Your people would be educated in proper galactic customs. Your technology would be regulated to prevent you from harming yourselves or others. Sarah kept her expression neutral, but inside she was fuming. Regulated technology, mining quotas. It sounded less like protection and more like slavery, with extra steps. And what if we prefer to remain independent? She asked carefully. The crystal being's lights dimmed slightly. That would be unwise. Space is dangerous for primitive species. Pirates, raiders, hostile empires. The galaxy is full of threats that you could not possibly handle alone. The spider-like being clicked its mandibles again. This time the translator picked up the words. Their fleet is tiny, 200 ships at most, based on our scans of their home system. Admiral Zeketh's lights brightened. Yes, the Confederation has noted your limited military capacity. This is why protection is necessary. Our fleet contains over 50,000 vessels, each more advanced than your most sophisticated ship. Sarah nodded slowly. I see. And how long do we have to consider your offer? Consider? The crystal being seemed surprised. There is nothing to consider. This is how all primitive species are integrated into galactic society. You should be grateful for the opportunity. The meeting ended politely enough. Admiral Zekth gave them a data pad containing the terms of the Protectorate Agreement and told them they had one standard galactic week to review it. Then the aliens departed, leaving the humans alone in their converted cargo bay. As soon as the alien shuttle was gone, Sarah called an emergency meeting with her senior staff. Captain Williams from the Discovery and Captain Park from the New Horizon joined them via secure video link. Well, Sarah said grimly, that could have gone better. Did you see how they looked at us? Captain Williams said, his face dark with anger on the screen. Like we were children playing with toys. The spider thing called our fleet tiny, added Captain Park. 200 ships, they think that's all we have. Sarah leaned back in her chair. Which raises the question, do we tell them they're wrong? The room went quiet. Everyone knew what she was talking about. The 3 ships that had made contact were just the tip of the iceberg. Humanity had been building ships for decades, hidden in asteroid bases and secret shipyards throughout human space. The public knew about maybe 1% of Earth's true military capacity. The Admiral seemed pretty confident about those 50,000 ships of theirs, said Commander Rodriguez, the Endeavor's tactical officer. 50,000 sounds like a lot. It is a lot, Sarah agreed, but not as much as they think. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the mission's chief xenobiologist and military advisor, had been quiet during the meeting. Now she spoke up. They're making assumptions, she said thoughtfully. Admiral Zeketh assumed that because we showed up with 3 ships, we must be a small, weak species. He assumed that because our technology looks primitive, we must be primitive. Most importantly, he assumed that we would be grateful to accept their protection. All reasonable assumptions, Captain Williams pointed out. Are they? Dr. Vasquez asked. Think about it. In their experience, all primitive species are weak. All weak species need protection. All species that need protection are grateful to receive it. They've been following this pattern for thousands of years. Sarah was beginning to see where this was going. But we're not following the pattern. Exactly. We're not grateful. We're not begging for protection. We're politely asking for trade relations between equals. Dr. Vasquez pulled up the treaty on her tablet. Look at these terms. Mining quotas that would strip our worlds bare. Technology, restrictions that would keep us dependent on them forever. Military limitations that would leave us helpless against any threat they didn't want to protect us from. It's not protection. Commander Rodriguez said grimly. It's conquest with pretty words. Sarah stood and began pacing. The Endeavor was small, but she needed to move while she thought. The question is, what do we do about it? We can't fight them. Even if we revealed our true fleet strength, 50,000 ships is still 50,000 ships. Can we? Captain Park asked. Fight them, I mean. Our intelligence suggests their ships are more advanced, but maybe not as advanced as they want us to think. Dr. Vasquez nodded. I was thinking the same thing. Did you notice how surprised they were that we had developed jump technology at all? They kept calling our fusion drives primitive, but fusion is still fusion. Energy is energy, and our ships are built for war. That was true. Humanity had learned early that space was dangerous. Every human ship, even the civilian ones, carried military-grade armor and weapons. It was just common sense when you were alone in a hostile universe. There's something else, Commander Rodriguez added. They're overconfident. Admiral Zekth didn't even bring an escort, 1 shuttle, 3 aliens, no backup. They're not expecting any resistance at all. Sarah stopped pacing. An idea was forming in her mind. Dangerous and risky, but maybe their only real option. What if we don't fight them, she said slowly. What if we let them keep thinking we're weak and primitive? Let them assume our 3 ships are all we have. You mean accept the Protectorate? Captain Williams looked shocked. No. I mean play along until we're ready. Sign their treaty. Follow their rules. Let them think they've won. Sarah's voice grew stronger as the plan took shape. Meanwhile, we learn everything we can about them, their technology, their fleet positions, their weaknesses. We smile and nod and act grateful while we prepare. Prepare for what? Dr. Vasquez asked, though Sarah suspected she already knew. For the day we stop pretending to be weak. The meeting went on for another hour, but the basic plan was set. Humanity would accept Protectorate status and begin the long, careful process of learning everything they could about their new protectors. Meanwhile, back home, the secret shipyards would keep building. The hidden fleets would keep training. The Galactic Confederation thought they were dealing with a primitive species of 200 ships. Let them keep thinking that. When the time came, they would learn just how wrong they had been. 3 days later, Sarah stood in the same cargo bay as Admiral Zekth materialized on the holographic display. She held up the signed treaty and managed to look properly grateful. Humanity accepts the protection of the Galactic Confederation, she said formally. We look forward to learning our place in galactic society. Admiral Zekth's lights pulsed with satisfaction. Excellent. You have made a wise choice. Confederation ships will arrive within the month to begin implementing the new trade agreements. Your species will benefit greatly from this arrangement. After the transmission ended, Sarah allowed herself one small, cold smile. The Confederation thought they had just gained another weak client species to exploit and control. They had no idea what they had actually done. They had just given humanity a front-row seat to study the greatest military power in the galaxy. They had handed over star charts, technology specifications, and fleet deployment schedules. They had opened their doors to human traders and observers and intelligence agents. Most importantly, they had given humanity time. Time to prepare, time to plan, time to build. The galaxy thought it knew what humans were capable of. Soon, very soon, they would learn the truth. 6 months had passed since humanity accepted Protectorate status under the Galactic Confederation. To most observers, humans had settled into their new role perfectly. They were polite, compliant, and eager to learn. Human traders could be found in markets across Confederation space, always following regulations and paying their taxes on time. Marcus Webb was one of those traders, or at least that's what his identification papers said. He stood in the bustling marketplace on Kepler Station, examining a display of exotic crystals while keeping his ears open for useful information. The Hegemony fleet is conducting exercises near the Vega sector again, one merchant was telling another. 3rd time this month. My shipping routes keep getting delayed. Marcus nodded sympathetically while making careful mental notes. The Hegemony. Fleet was Admiral Zekth's personal command, and their exercise patterns were very interesting indeed. Predictable, but interesting. "Excuse me," Marcus said to the crystal merchant, a being that looked like a walking tree made of purple gems. "These are beautiful. What system do they come from?" "Rigel 7, the merchant replied, his voice like wind chimes in a breeze. "Very rare. The mining rights are controlled by the Drakmor Empire. They only allow limited harvesting each year." Marcus examined the crystals more carefully. They weren't just pretty. They were perfect for focusing high-energy particle beams, the kind used in advanced weapon systems. "Fascinating," he said, purchasing a small sample. The Drakmor must be very advanced to work with such delicate materials. The merchant's crystal surface flickered with what might have been amusement. "Advanced? The Drakmor are barbarians. They use crude mining drones and brute force extraction. It's the crystals themselves that are special, not the ones who dig them up." Another useful piece of information. Marcus filed it away with all the others he had collected over the past months. The Confederation species all thought highly of their own technology and looked down on everyone else's. It was a weakness that could be exploited. As he left the market, Marcus activated his personal communicator and sent a brief coded message. To any interceptor, it would look like a routine shipping manifest. In reality, it was intelligence data being transmitted to a network of human agents spread across the galaxy. Back on Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez received Marcus's report along with dozens of others from human traders operating throughout Confederation space. She sat in her office deep beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex, surrounded by holographic displays showing star charts, fleet positions, and detailed analyses of alien technology. "Interesting," she murmured, studying the latest data on Drakmor mining operations. The Drakmor Empire was one of the more aggressive factions within the Confederation, known for their powerful warships and short tempers. They also, according to the intelligence reports, had a habit of acting first and asking permission later. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Dr. Vasquez opened the channel and saw Captain Chen's face appear on her main screen. Sarah was still commanding the Endeavor, now operating out of Luna Station as humanity's official liaison to the Confederation. "Elena," Sarah said without preamble, "we've got a problem. The Confederation Council just approved new mining quotas for the Sol system. They want to triple our output over the next year." Dr. Vasquez frowned. "Triple? That's impossible without strip mining half the asteroid belt." "I know. I tried to explain that to Admiral Zeketh, but he seems to think we're just being lazy. He's sending a technical advisor to help us improve our efficiency." "A technical advisor," Elena repeated flatly. "With a fleet escort," Sarah added. 12 ships, all armed. Elena leaned back in her chair. This was not good. Human mining operations in the asteroid belt were extensive, but they were also carefully designed to hide the massive shipyards scattered throughout the system. A Confederation technical advisor poking around could discover things that were meant to stay hidden. "How long do we have?" Elena asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. The advisor is traveling from the Confederation core worlds. Elena was already pulling up deployment schedules and construction timelines. "I'll handle it. We'll have to relocate some operations, but it's doable." "Elena," Sarah's voice was serious, "how much longer can we keep this up? The deception is getting harder to maintain every month." Elena looked at her displays, showing the positions of hundreds of human ships that the Confederation didn't know existed, hidden in asteroid bases, disguised as mining platforms, scattered through the outer system where no alien sensors had ever looked. "The primary fleet construction is 90% complete," she said carefully. "Secondary fleets are at 70%. If we had to reveal everything today, we'd have advantages." Sarah nodded slowly. They both knew what that meant. Humanity's hidden fleets now outnumbered the Confederation by almost 10 to 1, but numbers weren't everything and alien technology was still largely unknown. "Keep gathering intelligence," Elena said, "and keep playing the Grateful Protectorate. We're not ready yet." After the transmission ended, Elena turned to another holographic display showing the deepest levels of the Cheyenne Mountain complex. Far below her office, in chambers carved from solid rock, teams of human scientists and engineers worked around the clock, analyzing captured alien technology. It hadn't been hard to acquire samples. Confederation traders were happy to sell primitive humans their older, outdated equipment. What they didn't realize was that even their oldest technology was giving human scientists crucial insights into alien capabilities and weaknesses. Elena walked to the observation window overlooking Lab 7, where a team was dismantling a Confederation sensor array. The device was supposedly 30 years old and barely functional, but to human engineers it was a treasure trove of information. "What's the status, Dr. Kim?" Elena asked over the intercom. Dr. Kim looked up from the alien device, his face smudged with lubricant and his eyes bright with excitement. "Breakthrough, Elena. This sensor system is incredibly sophisticated, but it has a blind spot. It's designed to track metallic objects moving in predictable patterns, but it has trouble with anything that's too small, too irregular, or moving too fast." Elena felt a chill of excitement. Define too small. Anything smaller than about 50 meters. Their sensors are calibrated for detecting large ships, not fighters or missiles. That was very interesting indeed. Human military doctrine had always favored smaller, faster vessels over massive capital ships. It seemed that philosophy might be an advantage rather than a weakness. "There's more," Dr. Kim continued. "Their weapon systems are powerful, but they're designed for long-range engagements against large targets. Close-range combat seems to be almost unknown to them." Elena made careful notes. The Confederation had maintained peace for thousands of years, which meant most of their experience was with overwhelming shows of force, rather than actual fighting. They were used to enemies who surrendered before the shooting started. That was another potential weakness. Meanwhile, in the outer reaches of the Sol system, hidden shipyards continued their work. The asteroid base at Ceres had been hollowed out and converted into a massive construction facility. From the outside, it looked like a simple mining operation. Inside, it was building warships at a rate that would have shocked any Confederation observer. Commander Jackson floated in the zero gravity of the construction bay, watching as automated systems assembled the hull of humanity's newest battleship. The vessel was sleek and deadly, its armor forged from composite materials that didn't exist in Confederation databases. Its weapons were human-designed particle cannons capable of punching through any known alien shielding. "Ma'am," one of the construction supervisors called out, "we've got the final count from all production facilities." Jackson activated her portable display and studied the numbers. The results were staggering, even to her. Battleships, 15,000 completed, 5,000 under construction. Cruisers, 50,000 completed, 20,000 under construction. Destroyers, 100,000 completed, 30,000 under construction. Fighters, 500,000 completed, 200,000 under construction. And those were just the military vessels. Human civilian ships were also armed and armored to military standards, adding another 100,000 vessels to the potential fleet strength. The Confederation thought humanity had 200 ships. The real number was closer to 1,000,000. Jackson smiled grimly as she watched another battleship take shape in the construction bay. Every human ship was built with one purpose in mind: to prove that humanity would never again bow to anyone who threatened their freedom. The Confederation had made a mistake when they tried to make humanity a client species. They had assumed that humans would be grateful for protection, that they would accept limits on their technology and growth. They had been wrong. Back on Luna Station, Captain Chen was having another meeting with Admiral Zekth. The crystal being's hologram flickered slightly in the transmission from his flagship. "The technical advisor will arrive in 10 days, Admiral Zekth was saying. "Commander Vexnall of the Drakmor Empire. He is not efficient at improving mining operations." Sarah kept her expression neutral, but inside she was alarmed. The Drakmor were known for their aggressive methods and short patience. Having one of them poking around human operations could be dangerous. "We look forward to learning from Commander Vexnall's expertise," she said carefully. "Good. The commander has specific instructions to increase your system's output to acceptable levels. I trust there will be no resistance to his suggestions. Sarah heard the threat behind the polite words. Of course not, Admiral. Humanity is grateful for the Confederation's guidance. After the transmission ended, Sarah immediately contacted Dr. Vasquez. We have a problem. They're sending a Drakmor commander, not just a technical advisor. Elena's face darkened on the screen. The Drakmor don't take no for an answer. If he doesn't get the results he wants, he might decide to take more direct action. How direct? The kind that involves warships and ultimatums. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Elena, if it comes to a fight, then we fight, Elena said simply. The question is whether we reveal everything at once or try to maintain the deception. Can we maintain it against a Drakmor commander? Elena considered the question carefully. Probably not. The Drakmor aren't as easily fooled as the rest of the Confederation. Commander Vexnal will probably see through our mining operation covers within days. Sarah felt a cold certainty settle in her stomach. Then we need to be ready for the alternative. I'll start moving the fleets into position, Elena said. Quietly, but ready to act if necessary. As the preparations began across human space, none of the alien observers noticed anything unusual. Human traders continued their routes, buying exotic materials and selling raw resources. Human miners kept working the asteroid belt, their operations looking exactly as primitive and inefficient as expected. But beneath the surface, humanity was preparing for war. Hidden shipyards accelerated their production schedules. Secret training, bases ran combat simulations around the clock. Intelligence networks gathered every scrap of information about Confederation fleet positions and battle tactics. The Confederation had spent months teaching humanity how to be a good client species. They were about to learn that humanity had never been interested in being anyone's client. Commander Vexnal was coming to Sol with 12 ships and unlimited authority to enforce Confederation mining quotas. He had no idea that he was flying into a trap 6 months in the making, or that humanity had been using those 6 months to prepare for exactly this moment. The galaxy still thought it knew what humans were capable of. That was about to change. Commander Vexnal of the Drakmor Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crushing Fist, and studied the primitive solar system spread out before him. 12 Drakmor warships hung in space around him, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets. To his experienced eye, the Sol system looked pathetically underdeveloped. Vexnal was built for war, as all Drakmor were. His body was covered in natural armor plating that had turned black with age and battle scars. His forearms ended in claws that could crush steel, and his red eyes burned with the constant anger that drove his species to conquest. He had been fighting the Confederation's enemies for over a century, and he had never met a primitive species that didn't benefit from proper discipline. Report, he growled to his sensor officer, a younger Drakmor whose armor still held traces of its original gray color. The humans have several mining operations in the asteroid belt, Commander. Small-scale, inefficient extraction methods. Their largest facility appears to be on the dwarf planet they call Ceres. Vexnal nodded. It was exactly what he had expected. Primitive species always wasted their resources through lazy mining practices and poor organization. A few demonstrations of proper Drakmor efficiency would solve that problem quickly. And their defensive fleet? Minimal. We count approximately 15 ships in the immediate area, all civilian or lightly armed patrol vessels. Nothing that poses a threat to our task force. Vexnal's mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. The humans had learned their place quickly after accepting protectorate status. That was good. It meant they were smart enough to know when they were outmatched. Open a channel to the human leadership, he ordered. Captain Sarah Chen appeared, on his main screen, her image transmitted from Luna Station. To Vexnal, she looked weak and soft, like most non-warrior species. Her pale skin showed no scars, her limbs looked fragile, and her eyes held none of the righteous anger that proper soldiers carried. Commander Vexnal, she said politely, Welcome to the Sol system. We're honored by your visit. This is not a visit, Vexnall replied bluntly. I am here to improve your mining efficiency. Your current output is unacceptable. The Confederation requires 3 times more raw materials from this system. He watched her face carefully for signs of rebellion or resistance. Instead, she simply nodded. We understand the Confederation's needs, Commander. We're eager to learn better methods. Our mining techniques are admittedly primitive. Good. She knew her place. This would be easier than expected. I will inspect your operations personally, Vexnall announced. Beginning with your largest facility at Ceres, you will provide full access and cooperation. Of course, Commander. We've prepared quarters for you and your staff. When would you like to begin? The inspection? Now, Vexnall said, and cut the transmission. 2 hours later, Vexnall's shuttle approached the Ceres mining facility. From space, it looked exactly like what he expected from a primitive operation. A handful of small structures on the surface, some basic extraction equipment and mining ships moving slowly between the facility and nearby asteroids. But as his shuttle landed and he stepped onto the surface of the dwarf planet, Vexnall began to notice details that didn't quite fit. The airlock systems were more sophisticated than they should be. The corridors inside the facility were wider than necessary for a simple mining operation, and the humans he met seemed unusually calm for a species about to be shown how inadequate they were. Dr. Elena Vasquez met him at the main airlock, along with a team of human engineers and administrators. She was older than the ship captain, her hair gray with age, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. Commander Vexnall, she said with a respectful bow. I'm Dr. Vasquez, Director of Mining Operations for this facility. We're very interested in learning from Drakmor expertise. Vexnall studied her carefully. Something about her manner bothered him, though he couldn't identify what. She was being properly respectful, showing appropriate deference to his superior knowledge and experience. So why did he have the feeling that she was hiding something? Show me your extraction operations, he ordered. Dr. Vasquez led him through a series of corridors to what appeared to be a control room overlooking the mining floor. Through reinforced windows, Vexnall could see human workers operating drilling, equipment and processing raw ore. It was a competent operation, but nothing impressive. Our current extraction rate is approximately 500 tons of raw material per day, Dr. Vasquez explained. We know it's not efficient by galactic standards, but we're doing our best with the equipment we have. Vexnall nodded. 500 tons per day was pathetically low for a facility this size. With proper Drakmor methods, they should be extracting 10 times that amount. Your problem is obvious, he said, pointing at the drilling equipment. Your tools are too small, your methods too gentle. Mining requires force, not precision. You dig carefully around valuable materials like they might break. Raw ore is not fragile. It should be extracted quickly and in large quantities. I see, Dr. Vasquez said, making notes. So you would recommend more aggressive extraction methods? Much more aggressive. I will have my engineers prepare specifications for proper mining equipment. Your output will increase dramatically. What Vexnall didn't realize was that he was looking at exactly what the humans wanted him to see. The real mining operation at Ceres was taking place kilometers below their feet, in vast chambers that had been carved from solid rock over decades of careful work. The surface facility was just for show. As they continued the tour, Dr. Vasquez led him past what appeared to be storage areas, administration offices, and worker quarters, all perfectly normal for a mining facility, and all carefully designed to hide the truth. Hidden behind false walls and beneath fake floors, the Ceres facility housed one of humanity's largest military shipyards. Construction bays the size of city blocks contained half-completed battleships. Weapons testing ranges stretched for kilometers through the asteroid's interior. Command centers coordinated the movements of fleets that the Confederation didn't know existed, but Commander Vexnall saw none of it. He saw exactly what the humans wanted him to see. A primitive, inefficient mining operation that could be easily improved with proper guidance. The inspection continued for 3 days. Vexnall visited every facility in the Sol system, growing more confident with each stop that the humans were exactly what they appeared to be: weak, primitive, but cooperative. Perfect client species material. On the third day, he called a meeting with Captain Chen and Dr. Vasquez aboard his flagship. The humans arrived in a small shuttle, looking appropriately impressed by the size and power of the Drakmor warship. "Your mining operations are unacceptable," Vexnal announced without preamble as they stood in his command center. "But they can be improved. I am prepared to provide you with proper equipment and methods." "We're very grateful, Commander," Captain Name, Chen said. "What would be required?" Vexnal activated a holographic display showing mining equipment specifications. "First, you will replace all your current drilling systems with Drakmor heavy extractors. Second, you will expand your operations to include full-scale strip mining of at least 50 asteroids. Third, you will increase your workforce by a factor of 10. Elena nodded grimly. "Understood, Mr. President. Colonel Harrison, send the message to Admiral Stone. Tell her the galaxy is about to learn who they've been underestimating." Admiral Vexitar's fleet moved through the solar system like a plague of locusts, their weapons powered up and their sensors sweeping for any sign of human military resistance. They found none. A few cargo ships continued to flee toward the inner system, but there was no organized defense, no brave last stand by human warriors. "Pathetic," Vextar muttered. "At least most species try to fight back." His fleet reached Kepler Station exactly 1 hour after his ultimatum. The station was a small research facility built into a captured asteroid, home to scientists and their families who were studying the formation of planets in distant solar systems. It had no weapons, no shields, nothing that could threaten even a single Drakmor warship. Vextar gave the order personally. "All ships target the human station, fire at will." 2,000 alien warships opened fire simultaneously. The energy beams that struck Kepler Station were designed to destroy military installations protected by advanced shields and armor. Against a civilian research facility, they were like using a sledgehammer to crush an insect. Kepler Station vanished in a flash of light so bright it could be seen from Earth. 10,000 human civilians died instantly, vaporized before they could even scream. On Earth, Elena Vasquez watched the destruction with cold fury. "That's all we needed," she said quietly. "They just declared war on humanity." Admiral Vextar broadcast another message to Earth, this time with satisfaction clear in his voice. "Humans, you have witnessed the price of disobedience. Your species will now double its resource production quotas. Any further signs of insufficient gratitude will result in additional examples." He was expecting pleas for mercy, perhaps offers of increased cooperation. What he got instead was a response that would haunt him for the rest of his very short life. Captain Sarah Chen appeared on his communication screen, her face calm despite the horror that had just occurred. Behind her, the bridge of a human ship was visible, though it looked different from the primitive vessels Vextar had seen before. "Admiral Vextar," Sarah said in a voice as cold as space itself. "You wanted to know what humanity is truly capable of. You're about to find out." Vextar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Captain, you have 200 ships, I have 2,000. What exactly do you think you can do to us?" Sarah's expression didn't change. "We're about to show you that your intelligence reports were incomplete." The communication ended, leaving Vextar staring at a blank screen. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out suddenly, "I'm reading massive energy spikes throughout the system. Multiple contacts appearing on all frequencies." "Explain," Vextar demanded, moving to look at the sensor displays. What he saw made his blood run cold. Space around his fleet was coming alive with contacts. Ships were appearing from nowhere, emerging from asteroid fields and hidden bases that his sensors had never detected. Hundreds of them, then thousands. "That's impossible," Vextar whispered. "Our intelligence said they only had 200 ships." His tactical officer was frantically working at his station, trying to get accurate counts of the human fleet. "Admiral, I'm reading over 50,000 contacts and the numbers are still climbing. These signatures don't match any known human vessel types." On the main screen, the tactical display showed the Drakmor fleet surrounded by an ocean of red, dots representing human ships. Every few seconds, more contacts appeared as hidden vessels revealed themselves. "Admiral," the sensor officer called out in a shaking voice. "I'm detecting artificial gravity signatures consistent with massive ship construction." "Sir, some of these contacts are larger than our biggest battleships." Vextar stared at the display, in disbelief. In the space of minutes, his overwhelming numerical advantage had vanished. Instead of facing 200 primitive ships, he was surrounded by a fleet that outnumbered his forces 25-1. "How?" he whispered. "How did they hide so many ships?" The answer came from Captain Sarah Chen, whose ship had somehow appeared directly in front of the Drakmor flagship without being detected. "Admiral Vextar," she said, her image appearing on his screen again. "You made the same mistake everyone makes when they meet humanity. You assumed that what you could see was all there was." Behind her, the bridge of her ship was clearly visible, and Vextar could see that it was far more advanced than anything in his intelligence reports. The displays showed weapon systems and defensive capabilities that matched or exceeded Drakmor technology. "You see, Admiral," Sarah continued, "we've been preparing for this moment since we first learned we weren't alone in the universe. While you were busy ruling the galaxy, we were building the largest fleet in its history. While your spies were counting our cargo ships, our real warships were hiding in places your technology couldn't detect." Vextar found his voice. "You're bluffing. No species could build such a fleet in secret." Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Would you like a demonstration?" She nodded to someone off-screen, and suddenly every human ship in the solar system opened fire simultaneously. Not at the Drakmor fleet, but at carefully selected asteroids throughout the system. The display was breathtaking and terrifying. Thousands of energy beams lanced out from hidden human positions, striking targets across millions of miles of space with perfect accuracy. Asteroids that had drifted in space for billions of years were reduced to glowing dust in seconds. The demonstration lasted exactly 30 seconds. When it ended, the silence in Vextar's command center was absolute. "Admiral," Sarah said quietly, "that was less than 1% of our fleet's firepower. We could have targeted your ships instead of those rocks. The only reason you're still alive is that we wanted to make sure you understood the situation before we continue." Vextar looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. These were warriors who had never known defeat. Soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds in the name of the Drakmor Empire. Now they stared at their displays, with something he had never seen in their eyes before. Fear. "What do you want?" Vextar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Justice," Sarah replied. "You murdered 10,000 innocent people to make a point. Now we're going to make a point of our own." The human fleet began to move. Not chaotically, not with the desperate courage of a doomed species making a last stand. They moved with perfect coordination, like a vast machine designed for one purpose: war. Admiral Vextar realized, in that moment, that he had made the greatest mistake in Drakmor military history. He had attacked a species he didn't understand, based on intelligence that was completely wrong. He had brought his fleet to destroy a helpless enemy and instead found himself facing the most powerful military force in the galaxy. "Signal the fleet," he ordered quietly. "Prepare for battle." But even as he gave the order, Vextar knew it was hopeless. He had 2,000 ships. The humans had revealed at least 50,000, and Sarah Chen had implied there were many more still hidden. The Drakmor Empire was about to learn what happened when someone pushed humanity too far. The Battle of Sol began at exactly 1447 Earth Standard Time. Admiral Vextar gave the order to attack because he had no choice. His fleet was surrounded, outnumbered, and facing an enemy that had just demonstrated technological capabilities far beyond what Drakmor intelligence had reported. But Vextar was a warrior of the Empire, and warriors did not surrender. "All ships attack Formation Omega," he commanded. "Target the largest human vessels first. Show them what Drakmor steel can do." 2,000 alien warships opened fire, at once. Energy beams that could crack planets lanced out toward the human fleet, followed by missiles that burned like tiny stars as they crossed the void. For a moment, space itself seemed to catch fire as the combined firepower of the Drakmor Empire's finest battle group unleashed destruction on a scale that few species had ever witnessed. The humans were ready. Advanced warning systems had been tracking every Drakmor weapon from the moment they powered up. Computer systems that could process information faster than any alien mind began calculating trajectories, predicting impacts, and coordinating responses. What the Drakmor saw as overwhelming firepower, human technology saw as a complex mathematical problem that could be solved. Shields that had been hidden from alien sensors suddenly flared to life around human ships. These were not the simple energy barriers used by most galactic species. They were multi-layered defensive systems that could adapt to different types of attacks in real time. Energy beams that should have vaporized human vessels were absorbed and redirected. Missiles that could destroy cities were caught in gravity nets and turned back on their attackers. In the first 30 seconds of combat, the Drakmor fleet fired enough weapons to level a continent. Not a single human ship was destroyed. Admiral Vexitar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. "Nothing can absorb that much firepower." His sensor officer was frantically working at his station, trying to understand what he was seeing. "Admiral, the human shields are adapting to our weapons. Each shot we fire makes them more effective against the next one. Then we hit them harder," Vexitar snarled. "All ships, maximum power to weapons. Concentrate fire on a single target." Every gun on every Drakmor ship turned toward one human vessel, a sleek silver ship that was slightly larger than the others. The combined firepower of 2,000 warships focused on that single target like a spear of pure destruction. The human ship absorbed the attack without even slowing down. Captain Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the UES Retribution as the alien weapons fire splashed harmlessly against her ship's shields. Around her, the crew worked with calm efficiency, their training and preparation paying off exactly as intended. "Shields holding at 97%, reported Lieutenant Kim from the Defensive Systems Station. "The adaptive algorithms are working perfectly." Sarah nodded. "Communications, signal all fleet units. Execute Plan Omega." What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries to come, assuming there were any alien military academies left to study it. The human fleet moved like a living thing. Ships that had been spread throughout the solar system began converging on the Drakmor fleet from every direction. But they didn't attack randomly or charge forward in a desperate rush. They moved with mathematical precision, each vessel taking exactly the right position to maximize their effectiveness while minimizing their vulnerability. Admiral Vexitar watched his tactical display with growing horror as the human formation took shape around his fleet. It was like watching a trap close, each human ship moving to a predetermined position as part of a larger strategy that he couldn't fully comprehend. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "they're using some kind of distributed command system. I can't identify their flagship or command structure. Every ship seems to be operating independently while maintaining perfect coordination. This was humanity's greatest advantage, though the aliens didn't understand it yet. While every other species in the galaxy relied on centralized command structures that could be disrupted, humans had developed AI-assisted battle networks that allowed individual ships to act as part of a vast hive mind. Every human captain knew the battle plan. Every human ship could adapt to changing conditions without waiting for orders from above. Every human weapon system was coordinated with thousands of others to create effects far greater than the sum of their parts. "Begin the demonstration," Sarah said quietly. The human fleet attacked. It was not the chaotic fury of desperate defenders fighting for their lives. It was not the overwhelming charge of a superior force crushing weaker opponents. It was the methodical application of overwhelming force by an enemy that had studied every aspect of Drakmor, technology and tactics. Human energy weapons that had been designed specifically to penetrate Drakmor shields struck with surgical precision. Each shot was calculated to cause maximum damage while conserving power for sustained combat. Missiles that could adjust their attack patterns in flight swarmed over alien defenses like intelligent predators. The first Drakmor ship died exactly 47 seconds after the humans opened fire. The heavy cruiser Bloody Fang simply vanished in a ball of superheated plasma as its shields failed and its hull was breached in 17 different places simultaneously. Impossible, Vextar whispered, watching one of his finest vessels disappear from the tactical display. They're using our own weapons frequencies against us. He was right, though he didn't understand how. For months, human intelligence operatives had been studying Drakmor technology through the materials they traded with the Confederation. Every shield frequency, every weapon signature, every defensive system had been analyzed and cataloged. The humans knew Drakmor capabilities better than the Drakmor themselves. More ships began to die. The destroyer Sharptooth lasted 31 seconds. The battlecruiser Ironclaw managed 42 seconds before its reactor went critical. Each destruction was precise, efficient, and absolutely final. Admiral Vextar realized he was watching the systematic annihilation of his fleet. "Signal all ships," he ordered desperately. "Scatter formation. Make them hunt us individually." It was a reasonable tactical decision under normal circumstances. By spreading his forces out, Vextar hoped to force the humans to split their attention and reduce the effectiveness of their coordinated attacks. The humans were prepared for this too. As the Drakmor ships began to scatter, the human fleet split into smaller groups with fluid grace. Each group was perfectly sized to handle the alien vessels it pursued. No Drakmor ship found itself facing fewer than 5 human vessels, and most were targeted by 10 or more. The battle became a series of smaller engagements spread across millions of miles of space. In every case, the result was the same. Human ships with superior shields, better weapons, and perfect coordination destroyed their alien opponents with methodical efficiency. Admiral Zekth of the Hegemony Fleet was monitoring the battle from his flagship 50 light-years away. His crystal form had lost much of its usual luminescence as he watched the tactical reports streaming in from human space. "This cannot be accurate," he said to his staff officers. "Check the sensors again." "Admiral," his intelligence officer replied, "we've confirmed the readings through multiple sources. The human fleet is, extensive." Zeketh studied the data with growing disbelief. The humans were revealing more ships with every passing minute. His sensors now detected over 100,000 human vessels, and the count was still rising. "How did we miss this?" Zeketh asked quietly. His intelligence officer, a floating jellyfish-like being with multiple sensory organs, dimmed its bioluminescent patches in what passed for shame among its species. "Admiral, our analysis was based on observable human activities. They appeared to have limited industrial capacity and minimal military infrastructure. And now we realize they were hiding their true capabilities behind elaborate deceptions. The cargo ships we observed were actually intelligence vessels. The mining operations were covers for massive military construction projects. Every assumption we made about human capabilities was wrong." Zeketh watched as another section of Admiral Vexatar's fleet disappeared from the tactical display. The Drakmor forces were being systematically destroyed, and there was nothing he could do to help them. His own fleet was too far away, and even if he could reach the battle in time, he was beginning to doubt whether he wanted to face these humans in combat. "Sir," his tactical officer interrupted, "we're receiving an emergency transmission from Admiral Vextar." Zeketh's image appeared on the main screen of the Drakmor flagship, where Admiral Vextar was desperately trying to organize a defense against forces he couldn't match. "Admiral Zeketh," Vextar called out, his voice distorted by battle damage. "To his ship's communication systems, the humans have revealed a massive fleet. My forces are being overwhelmed. I need immediate reinforcement." Zeketh looked at the tactical data streaming from the battle. Vextar had started with 2,000 ships. He now had fewer than 800, and that number was dropping every minute. "Admiral Vextar," Zeketh said carefully, "how many human ships are you facing?" "I don't know," Vextar admitted, his pride finally broken by the reality of his situation. "They keep revealing more. My sensors show at least 50. Captain Sarah Chen opened a communication channel to the remnants of the Drakmor fleet. "Admiral Vextar," she said, her voice carrying clearly across space despite the interference from weapon fire and explosion debris. "You have fought bravely, but this battle is over. Surrender now and your surviving crew members will be treated according to the laws of war." Vextar's image appeared on her screen. The proud Drakmor warrior was barely recognizable. His ship was damaged, his fleet was destroyed, and his certainty in Drakmor superiority had been shattered beyond repair. "What are your terms?" he asked quietly. "Immediate cessation of hostilities," Sarah replied. "Your surviving ships will be escorted to a neutral location where your crews will be transferred to Confederation custody. In return, we guarantee the safety of all personnel who surrender." Vextar looked around his bridge at the faces of his remaining officers. These were warriors who had never known defeat, soldiers who had been taught that surrender was worse than death. But they had also just witnessed the complete destruction of everything they had believed about military power. "I accept your terms," Vextar said finally. The Battle of Sol ended exactly 6 hours and 14 minutes after it began. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. The Drakmor Empire's finest battle fleet had been annihilated so completely that the Confederation would spend months trying to understand what had happened. But the real shock was yet to come. As the surviving Drakmor ships were escorted away from the battle zone, human sensors detected massive fleets moving throughout Confederation space. Ships that had been hidden for months were suddenly revealing themselves around every major alien stronghold. The humans hadn't just won a battle. They had positioned themselves to control the entire galaxy. Admiral Zekth received the first reports an hour after Vextar's surrender. Human fleets were appearing near every major Confederation base, every important trade route, every strategic installation. Thousands of ships that had somehow remained undetected were now openly patrolling space that the Confederation had controlled for millennia. "How many ships do they have?" Zekth asked his intelligence officer. The jellyfish-like being's lights flickered with what might have been panic. "Admiral, our best estimate is now over 500,000 vessels. They appear to have the largest fleet in galactic history." Zekth was quiet for a long time, processing the implications of what he was learning. The humans had not simply defeated the Drakmor fleet. They had revealed that the balance of power in the galaxy had fundamentally changed. "Sir," his communication officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. It's addressed to all Confederation forces." Captain Sarah Chen's face appeared on screens throughout Confederation space, her message broadcast on every frequency simultaneously. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, "today marks the end of an era. For too long, the strong have oppressed the weak. For too long, might has been confused with right. For too long, species have been forced to accept subjugation as the price of peace." She paused, looking directly into the camera with eyes that held no hatred, only determination. "Humanity hereby serves notice that we will no longer tolerate the abuse of any species by those who believe themselves superior. The age of Confederation dominance is over. The age of true galactic cooperation begins now." Admiral Zeketh turned off the transmission and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, hundreds of thousands of human warships were patrolling space that had belonged to the Confederation for 10,000 years. A species that had been dismissed as primitive and harmless had just demonstrated that they possessed the most powerful military force in galactic history. The Crystal Admiral realized that everything was about to change. 3 weeks after the Battle of Sol, Admiral Zeketh stood in his private quarters aboard the Hegemony flagship, staring out at a sight he had never expected to see. Human warships surrounded his fleet in perfect formation, their sleek hulls reflecting the light of nearby stars. They were not aggressive or threatening. They simply existed, a constant reminder that the balance of power in the galaxy had changed forever. The Crystal Admiral had spent the last 21 days trying to understand what had happened. The reports from across Confederation space all told the same impossible story. Human fleets had appeared simultaneously at every major installation, every strategic choke point, every important world. They had not attacked or made demands. They had simply positioned themselves where they could not be ignored. The galaxy was in shock. Species that had accepted Confederation rule for millennia were asking questions that had never been asked before. If the humans could hide such a massive fleet for so long, what else might they be capable of? If they could defeat the Drakmor Empire so completely, who else might they challenge? A soft chime indicated that someone was requesting permission to enter his quarters. Zekth turned from the window with reluctance. Enter. His aide, a young crystalline being named Jextal, stepped into the room. The aide's form was dim with anxiety, colors shifting nervously through his translucent structure. Admiral, Jextal said, the human representative has arrived. Fleet Admiral Chen is requesting a formal meeting to discuss the current situation. Zekth felt something that might have been amusement, though it was difficult to tell with his species. 3 weeks ago, Sarah Chen had been a captain of a single ship, dismissed as a representative of a minor species. Now she commanded the largest fleet in galactic history and held the power to reshape civilization itself. Very well, Zekth said. Escort her to the main conference chamber. And, Jextal? Yes, Admiral. Ensure she receives all appropriate honors. Whether we like it or not, she now speaks for the most powerful military force in the galaxy. The conference chamber was a vast space designed to impress visitors with the might and grandeur of the hegemony fleet. Crystal formations grew from the walls and ceiling, creating patterns of light that had awed alien diplomats for centuries. At the center of the room sat a table carved from a single piece of star crystal, surrounded by chairs sized for dozens of different species. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen entered the chamber with a small escort of human officers. She wore a simple uniform without excessive decoration, and her manner was calm and professional. Zeketh found himself studying her carefully, trying to understand how this unremarkable-looking human had orchestrated the greatest strategic deception in galactic history. Admiral Zekth, Sarah said, offering a respectful nod. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. Admiral Chen, Zekth replied, gesturing toward the conference table. Please be seated. I confess I am curious to understand your intentions. Sarah took her place at the table, her officers arranging themselves nearby. Zekth noticed that they all appeared relaxed and confident, showing none of the nervousness he would have expected from representatives of a newly powerful species. My intentions are quite simple, Sarah began. I want to discuss the future of galactic civilization. The Confederation has maintained peace and order for 10,000 years, Zekth said carefully. Are you suggesting this system should be changed? Sarah smiled, but there was no malice in the expression. Admiral, with respect, the Confederation has maintained control for 10,000 years. Peace and order are not the same thing. She activated a small device she had brought with her, and holographic displays filled the air between them. The images showed scenes from across Confederation space, mining colonies where alien workers labored under harsh conditions, research, stations where entire species were forced to hand over their technological discoveries, worlds where local populations were relocated to make room for Confederation projects. This is what your peace looks like, Sarah continued. Millions of beings working as slaves in all but name. Entire species reduced to providing raw materials for others. Civilizations forced to abandon their own development to serve the greater good of the Confederation. Zeketh studied the images with growing discomfort. These species chose to join the Confederation. They accepted protectorate status willingly. Did they? Sarah asked. Or did they make the same choice we were offered? Submit or be destroyed? The Crystal Admiral was quiet for a moment. In truth, he had never thought deeply about how new species were integrated into Confederation society. It had always seemed natural that more advanced civilizations would guide less developed ones. What would you have us do? Zeketh asked finally. Dissolve the Confederation entirely? Allow chaos to return to the galaxy? Not at all, Sarah replied. We propose to transform it into something better, something that serves all species rather than just the powerful ones. She activated another section of her device, and the holographic displays changed to show new images. These depicted human ships arriving at Confederation facilities, but instead of attacking or occupying, they were providing aid. Medical supplies were being distributed to colonies that had been neglected. Food shipments were reaching worlds that had been stripped of resources. Human engineers were helping to rebuild infrastructure that had been damaged by exploitative mining operations. "Admiral," Sarah said, "we don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to liberate it." Zekth absorbed this information with surprise. "You're providing aid to species throughout Confederation space?" "We are," Sarah confirmed. "For the past 3 weeks, our fleets have been delivering supplies and assistance to any world that requests it. We're not demanding payment or loyalty. In return, we're simply helping." The implications of this were staggering. Zekth realized that while the Confederation leadership had been focused on the military threat posed by the human fleet, humanity had been quietly revolutionizing the social and economic structure of galactic civilization. "The response has been remarkable," Sarah continued. "Species that have lived under Confederation rule for centuries are beginning to rediscover their own cultures and technologies. Worlds that were forced to specialize in resource extraction are starting to develop other industries. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy is seeing genuine diversity and innovation." "And you expect no resistance from the Confederation Council?" Zekth asked. Sarah's expression grew more serious. "Admiral, we hope for cooperation, but we're prepared for resistance. Our fleet capabilities speak for themselves." Zekth nodded, slowly. The human demonstration of force had been impossible to ignore. Any species that tried to oppose them militarily would face the same fate as Admiral Vextar's fleet. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked. Sarah leaned forward, her manner becoming more earnest. "We propose the creation of a new galactic organization. One based on cooperation rather than domination. One where every species has a voice regardless of their military strength or technological development." She activated a new set of displays showing the structure of the proposed organization. It was remarkably different from the Confederation's hierarchical system. The Galactic Alliance, Sarah explained, would be governed by a council with representatives from every member species. Decisions would be made by consensus whenever possible, with voting procedures for cases where agreement cannot be reached. No single species or faction would have the power to dominate others. "And enforcement?" Zekth asked. "How would this alliance maintain order without military superiority?" "Through voluntary compliance backed by collective security," Sarah replied. "The human fleet would serve as peacekeepers, but only to prevent aggression between member species. We would not impose political or economic policies on anyone." Zekth studied the proposal carefully. It was idealistic, perhaps naively so, but he could see the appeal it would have for species that had chafed under Confederation rule. "Admiral Chen," he said finally, "you must understand that many Confederation species will view this as conquest, disguised as liberation. They will not willingly give up their positions of privilege." "We understand that," Sarah acknowledged, "but we also believe that most species, given the choice, would prefer freedom to servitude. And those who would choose to oppress others?" She paused meaningfully. "Well, they will find that option no longer available." The meeting continued for several more hours, covering details of the transition process and the structure of the proposed alliance. Zekth found himself impressed despite his reservations. The humans had clearly thought through the implications of their actions far more thoroughly than he had expected. As the formal discussions concluded, Sarah made one final request. "Admiral Zekth," she said, "we would like you to serve as the first chairman of the Alliance Council." Zekth's crystal form flickered with surprise. "Me? But I represent the old order. I was part of the system you're trying to replace." "Exactly," Sarah replied. "The Alliance will only succeed if it includes voices from all backgrounds, including former Confederation leadership. We need people who understand the old system and can help others transition to the new one." Militaristic species to resist the changes. Their rebellion lasted exactly 47 hours before human peacekeeping forces surrounded their home system and convinced them to reconsider. Admiral Zekth ultimately accepted the position of Alliance chairman, though he insisted on sharing power with representatives from multiple species. His first official act was to formally dissolve the Galactic Confederation and transfer all its assets to the new alliance. The ceremony took place on Earth, in a vast auditorium that could accommodate beings from hundreds of different species. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered to witness the signing of the Terra Accords, the founding document of the new galactic order. As Admiral Zekth affixed his crystal signature to the Accords, he reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. A year ago, he had commanded one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy and believed that military might was the foundation of all order. Now he served an organization dedicated to the principle that true strength came from cooperation and mutual respect. The final speaker at the ceremony was Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen, representing humanity's role in the new alliance. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, addressing the assembled representatives and the billions of beings watching through holographic transmission. "Today marks not the end of an era, but the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history." She paused, looking out at the diverse gathering of species that filled the auditorium. For too long, the galaxy has been divided between the strong and the weak, the rulers and the ruled. Today, we declare that such divisions have no place in a civilized society. Today we choose cooperation over domination, diversity over conformity, freedom over security. The response was thunderous, with each species expressing approval in their own unique way. Crystal beings chimed like bells, insectoid species clicked, their mandibles in rhythm, and gaseous entities shifted their colors in patterns of agreement. "The Alliance faces many challenges," Sarah continued when the noise had died down. "There will be disagreements about policy, disputes over resources, and conflicts between different ways of life. But we will face these challenges together, as equals, with respect for the dignity and rights of every sentient being." She gestured toward the massive holographic display that showed the human fleet patrolling the galaxy. "The human fleet will continue to serve as peacekeepers, but not as rulers. Our ships will protect the weak from the strong, defend the innocent from the aggressive, and ensure that no species ever again faces the choice between submission and destruction." Admiral Zeketh listened to these words with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. The humans had demonstrated that they possessed the power to enforce their vision of galactic order, but would they be able to resist the corrupting influence of such power? History suggested that even the most well-intentioned conquerors eventually became tyrants. As if reading his thoughts, Sarah addressed this concern directly. "Some of you may wonder whether humanity will follow the same path as previous galactic powers, whether we will eventually use our strength to impose our will on others. To those concerns I offer this promise. The moment humanity begins to abuse its power, the moment we begin to treat other species as inferiors, that is the moment we will have betrayed everything we fought for." She activated a final holographic display, showing the structure of the Alliance's oversight systems. "Therefore, we have built safeguards into the Alliance Charter. Human military actions must be approved by the Council. Our peacekeeping forces are subject to Alliance oversight. And most importantly, every species has the right to withdraw from the Alliance at any time, for any reason." The ceremony concluded with the lighting of the Flame of Unity, a symbolic fire that would burn at Alliance headquarters as long as the organization existed. Representatives from every member species contributed something to the flame: energy, rare materials, or simply their commitment to the principles it represented. As Admiral Zekth made his contribution, a fragment of crystal that would burn with eternal light, he thought about the lesson humanity had taught the galaxy. The greatest power was not the ability to destroy enemies, but the wisdom to turn enemies into allies. Years later, historians would debate whether the human revolution had been inevitable or merely the result of extraordinary circumstances. They would analyze the military strategies, the political negotiations, and the social transformations that had reshaped galactic civilization. But Admiral Zeketh, watching from his office as ships from hundreds of different species worked together to maintain peace and prosperity throughout the galaxy, knew the real lesson of humanity's rise to power. The galaxy had underestimated humanity not because their ships were hidden, but because their true strength had never been military at all. Their real power lay in their ability to see beyond the divisions that separated species, to imagine a better future, and to work tirelessly to make that future a reality. The humans had built the largest fleet in galactic history not to conquer the stars, but to ensure that all beings could share them freely. In doing so, they had accomplished something far more remarkable than military victory. They had given the galaxy hope. The old order was dead. The new order was just beginning, and for the first time in 10,000 years, every species in the galaxy could look toward the future with optimism rather than fear. Humanity had kept its promise. They had revealed their true strength, and it was greater than anyone had imagined.